Okay, so today we're going to dive into something that's observed by, I think it's nearly a quarter of the world's population every year.
Yeah, every year.
Which is the Islamic holy month of Ramadan.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is. And we've got a bunch of sources here that really shed light on what this month is all about. And we're going to try to go a little bit beyond just the basic understanding of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So our mission today is to give you a clear grasp of its profound importance and the traditions that shape it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think our sources do a really good job of kind of giving us that deep dive into Ramadan, which is the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar, as they point out.
Right.
And a period of time that's incredibly important in terms of spiritual and cultural significance to Muslims across the globe.
Right.
And really at the core of why it's so sacred is the belief that the Quran, which is the holy book of Islam, was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, during this month.
Okay, so that's the bedrock, the revelation of the Quran.
Yeah.
Okay, now when we talk about Ramadan, I think the first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is fasting.
Right.
And, our sources refer to it as Psalm.
Right.
Can you kind of walk us through what that practice actually involves for those who observe it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Psalm is the act of abstaining from all food, all drink, smoking and marital relations from dawn until sunset.
Okay.
And it's marked by prayer. So you have the Fajr prayer, which marks dawn, and then you have the Maghrib prayer, which is at sunset.
Okay.
But the thing about Psalm is that it's not merely a physical discipline.
Right.
The goal of Psalm is a spiritual goal, and that's to achieve taqwa.
Okay, taqwa. We see that term come up. So what is the essence of taqwa in this context of fasting? It sounds like it's a lot more than just willpower.
Yeah, absolutely. So taqwa is often translated as God consciousness.
Okay.
So it's like this awareness of God.
Right.
And the act of fasting is meant to help you cultivate this state.
Right.
By purifying the soul. So, throughout the day, you're making a conscious effort to avoid negative behaviors.
Yeah.
So things like gossiping or lying or arguing, backbiting, things like that.
So it's really a holistic endeavor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about kind of purifying yourself.
Okay, now the sources also mention the meals that bookend this period of fasting. You have suhoor before dawn and iftar at sunset.
Yeah.
So what's the significance of these meals within the framework of the fast?
Yeah, so suhoor is the pre-dawn meal, and it's meant to give you sustenance and energy for the day ahead.
Right.
It's considered a blessed meal, and people are encouraged to partake in it.
Okay.
And then iftar, obviously, is when you break the fast at sunset.
Right.
And there's a tradition associated with iftar that I think is really beautiful, and our sources point this out as well.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It's common to begin iftar by eating dates and drinking water.
Oh, okay.
And this goes back to the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And so it's something that connects people to, a tradition that's been going on for centuries.
Yeah, it's that consistency.
Yeah.
But beyond just the physical act, and the structure of the meals, what are some of the deeper, spiritual and emotional takeaways that Muslims experience during this fast? What is it doing on that interior level?
Yeah, so fasting is about, foregoing some pretty basic needs like food and water.
Right.
And so in that sense, it's a really personal expression of devotion.
Yeah.
And a way to seek closeness to Allah or to God.
And it also, I would imagine, kind of forces you to realize how much you take for granted on a daily basis.
Absolutely. When you experience even a temporary sense of hunger or thirst,
yeah,
it really makes you appreciate all the blessings that you have.
Right.
And also, experiencing what it's like to go without
right.
can cultivate a sense of empathy and compassion for those who are less fortunate.
Yeah, okay.
So it really kind of pushes you to be more mindful of the needs of others.
It sounds like a huge catalyst for both introspection and this outward connection.
Definitely.
Okay, now shifting gears a little bit.
Sure.
The sources talk about Taraweeh.
Yeah?
And these are special nightly prayers during Ramadan, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So Taraweeh prayers are offered after the Isha prayer, which is one of the 5 daily prayers. And these are offered every night during the month of Ramadan.
Okay.
And what's noteworthy about them is the way that they're structured.
Okay. What makes them stand out?
So during Taraweeh prayers, lengthy portions of the Quran are recited.
Okay.
And oftentimes in mosques, the goal is to actually complete the entire Quran during the month of Ramadan.
Oh, wow.
So imagine, standing for long periods of time listening to these verses.
Yeah.
And really immersing yourself in the Quran.
Right.
It's quite an experience.
That's a serious commitment.
It is, yeah.
And the sources mention that these prayers take place in mosques, so there's a communal aspect to this.
Absolutely. I mean, praying together, as a community,
Right.
reflecting on the same verses,
Yeah.
it really strengthens the bonds of the community, and it provides, mutual support during this time.
Yeah, that shared rhythm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's very powerful.
Moving on to what sounds like a really pivotal night in Ramadan, Laylat al-Qadr,
Yes.
often called the night of decree or the night of power.
Right.
The sources describe this as one of the holiest nights in Islam.
It is.
Why is it held in such high esteem?
So Laylat al-Qadr is believed to fall within the last 10 nights of Ramadan.
Okay.
Although the exact date isn't specified,
Mm-hmm.
many Muslims believe that it falls on the 27th night.
Okay.
But the significance of this night stems from the belief that this was the night when the Quran first began to be revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Wow.
So it's an incredibly important night.
So it's like the genesis of that revelation.
It is.
And so what are the implications of that for Muslims who are observing this night?
So because of this connection to the revelation of the Quran, Muslims believe that acts of worship that are done on this night carry a reward that's equivalent to worshiping for over 1,000 months.
1,000 months. So that's like a lifetime.
It's a really long time.
So how do Muslims typically observe a night that holds this much, significance?
You'll find Muslims engaging in extra prayers, reciting the Quran, making supplication to God,
Okay.
seeking forgiveness.
Right.
And many mosques are open all night, and many Muslims would actually spend the entire night in prayer.
Wow. So this is really a night of deep reflection and spiritual closeness.
Definitely.
It's a very special night.
Ramadan also has a strong emphasis on, giving and compassion.
Yeah.
And the sources discuss both Sadaqah and the obligatory charity of Zakat al-Fitr.
Right.
Can you clarify the distinction between these and their importance during this month?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ramadan is a time when, generosity and empathy are emphasized.
Yeah.
And Sadaqah refers to voluntary acts of charity.
So Muslims are really encouraged to give more charity during this month, whether it's through, monetary donations or by volunteering their time or by helping those in need.
So just doing whatever they can.
Yeah, doing whatever they can.
Okay.
And then the Zakat al-Fitr is a specific form of charity that's obligatory upon every able-bodied Muslim.
Okay.
And it has to be paid before the end of Ramadan, typically before the Eid prayers.
Okay.
And the main purpose of Zakat al-Fitr is to ensure that even the poorest members of the community are able to celebrate Eid.
Okay, so it's about inclusivity in that celebration.
Exactly.
And the sources also say that giving charity, whether it's Sadaqah or Zakat al-Fitr, is seen as a way to purify one's wealth
Absolutely. Yeah.
and strengthen that social fabric of the community.
It's about, taking care of each other.
Now, the sources touch on the benefits of fasting, and they mention physical, spiritual, social benefits.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need to do a whole, medical breakdown here.
Wow.
But I'm curious, what would you say are some of the core spiritual and social advantages that they highlight?
So on a spiritual level, we've already talked about how fasting can really increase your God consciousness.
Right.
It can make you more grateful for the blessings that you have.
Right.
And it can really help you cultivate empathy and compassion.
And then socially, I imagine that shared experience of fasting and breaking the fast together.
Absolutely. It really strengthens the bonds of the community.
Right.
And, the emphasis on charity during Ramadan
Yeah.
promotes this idea of collective responsibility and taking care of each other.
And of course, all of this leads up to the celebration of Eid al-Fitr.
Yeah, it's a big celebration.
So tell me about this festival. What can you tell us about it?
So Eid al-Fitr marks the end of Ramadan.
Okay.
It's the celebration of the successful completion of the month of fasting.
Okay.
And it begins with a special prayer, communal prayer.
Right.
And then after the prayer, there's lots of feasting.
Well-deserved feasting, I would imagine.
Definitely.
Yeah. After a month of fasting?
And there's a lot of gift giving and visiting with loved ones.
Right.
It's a time of great joy and celebration.
And the sources mention that people put on their finest clothes.
Yeah, it's customary to dress in your best clothes as a way of kind of celebrating and showing gratitude to God for enabling you to complete the fast.
Right. So it's an outward expression of that joy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting that while these core tenets of Ramadan remain consistent globally, the actual experience of it varies across different cultures and regions.
Definitely.
The sources kind of touch on that.
Yeah. So, the fundamental practices of fasting, prayer, and charity are observed all over the world.
Right.
But the way that it's expressed culturally can be quite diverse.
Okay.
So, in many Muslim majority countries, for example,
Right.
the streets are decorated with lights.
Oh, wow.
There are special foods that are prepared.
Okay.
There's this really palpable sense of joy and celebration in the air.
Wow, it really paints a picture of something that's both deeply personal in its spiritual focus,
Yeah,
but then also very much communal.
definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
that's both.
So as we kind of come to the end of our deep dive here,
Sure.
what would you say are the most important takeaways about Ramadan, for someone who's trying to understand its significance?
Yeah, so I think ultimately, Ramadan is about so much more than just abstaining from food and drink.
Okay.
It's a deeply personal and spiritual journey. It's about, fostering a connection with God.
Right.
It's about cultivating compassion for others.
Yeah.
And it's about bettering yourself.
Right.
It's a time for reflection, for gratitude, and for renewal.
And I imagine that these values that are instilled during Ramadan, like the discipline, the empathy, the devotion,
Right.
they don't just disappear when the month is over.
No, absolutely
They
not.
kind of permeate the rest of the year.
Yeah, they carry over.
Well, that's a really insightful summary. I think it really captures the depth and the lasting impact of this month.
Thank you.
And on that note, here's a final thought for you to consider.
Yep.
Across the vast spectrum of, human cultures and belief systems, what fundamental role do you think shared periods of self-discipline and communal observance play in shaping our individual character and also our collective identity?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
It's something to think about.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Of course. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, this was great.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you then. Bye.